Hello, I'm Christopher Lund, the school director, and on behalf of the faculty and staff of Triangle Tech Pittsburgh, I'd like to welcome our graduates and their family and friends to the summer virtual graduation ceremony for Triangle Tech Pittsburgh. We are truly excited to be here today to honor our most recent graduating class. You did it. Congratulations. Today's your day. It is a day that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. While this is a virtual graduation ceremony, don't think for 1 minute that it makes the celebration any less important, as it is in no way diminished just because it's virtual instead of in person. I would have loved nothing more than to be there on the stage, have you walk over, shake my hand, get your degree, get your picture taken. But you know what? That's just not possible right now with the pandemic. As such, we're going to continue on with this virtual format, and again I say it is just as important as if we were there in person. Now this is your graduation. It is the culmination of all your experience at Triangle Tech, and it's the beginning of your career. This is just the beginning of the adventure. Now, it's important to reflect back on the journey as well, and to think back about all the things that it took to get you here. While today's graduation, and it's the end of the beginning, it's certainly not the end of the journey. Think back to when you first checked out the school, when you came in and met with the admissions rep, when you looked around and got the tour, when you made that decision that Triangle Tech was the right choice for you. Remember your orientation day. Remember when you first came to school on that first day, met all your teachers, and began your journey. And now look at you. Look at where you are. You've graduated. You accomplished your goal. You have your associate degree. You have all the tools necessary to go out there and conquer the world and be successful. But now it's all up to you. Your life is going to be what you make it to be. Don't sit back and settle. Don't just accept what happens. Decide what you want. Decide what your dreams are, where you want to be in 5 and 10 years, and make it happen. The only thing that's ever going to limit you in this life is you. So decide what you want and where you want to go and how much success you want to have, and make it a reality. I just want to say that I'm so proud of all the graduates for overcoming all the obstacles that got in the way during this time that you were here in school. We have to obviously address the most important one, which was the pandemic and everything that happened during the spring semester. And I just want to say how proud I am of each and every graduate, because all of you overcame those obstacles. When we went into a virtual format, this is a hands-on training program, and you all adapted so well and made it happen because it was important to you. We've been behind you since day one, and we're here at the end of this part of the journey because we want to say congratulations for a job really well done. As the director of the school, I could not be more proud of this graduating class, and I just want you all to know that I'm so excited to be here at this point when you start the next step in your journey. Remembering the family and friends that helped you along the way as well, that's also important. Those people that kind of gave you that nudge to get out of bed on those mornings that you just didn't want to. You know, the people that gave you the pep talk when you felt things were a little overwhelming. So look to them right now and give them a quick thank you for being there and by your side from the very beginning of this whole thing as well. Again, congratulations to all the graduates. I'm looking forward to this graduation ceremony, and let us go ahead and begin. Thank you.
Hello, I'm James Pertell, the Assistant Director of Education at Triangle Tech Pittsburgh. I would first like to congratulate the summer 2020 graduates of the Triangle Tech Pittsburgh campus. Your commencement day is here, and I can honestly say that each and every one of you have truly earned the degree that you've worked so very hard to achieve. This calendar year has brought our country and world many challenges with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but none more than the students across all educational levels. You have persevered through beginning as a traditional student for your first and second terms, through an almost completely online third term, and finally as a hybrid student during your final term this past summer. Any student who can navigate through such unprecedented circumstances and succeed with a degree has both the grit and determination to succeed in any type of environment that this world can throw at them. Every end has a new beginning. This past month might have been your last days as a student at Triangle Tech, but I believe that your learning is really only beginning. Most, if not all of you, will be entering into the workforce, while the skill set and education that you collected in your 16 months at Triangle Tech Pittsburgh will certainly provide you a leg up on your competition for employment. You must also remember that education is both a career and lifelong endeavor, specifically in the fields of carpentry and construction, electricians, welding, refrigeration, heating and cooling, and computer-aided drafting and manufacturing. I know that I can speak on behalf of all the faculty and staff at Triangle Tech Pittsburgh when I say that we are all truly proud of all of your accomplishments, and please know that your best days lie ahead of you. Congratulations once again, and enjoy the remainder of your virtual commencement.
Well, good evening. I'd first like to thank Triangle Tech for inviting me here tonight to allow me to speak before you. And I'd also like to congratulate all the students out there who are graduating from Triangle Tech tonight. That's an amazing accomplishment. So you may be wondering about the Scout uniform. Well, I've been a Scout leader now for the past 15 years, and I've found that Scouting teaches great life lessons. And so tonight, that's what I want to talk about with a story. So this story is about a young boy, probably about 12 or 13 at the time. Now this boy, he just loved Scouting. He loved everything about it. Everything that is, except for one thing. You see, every day when he went to school, he was bullied by this other boy, simply for being a Scout. Now, most boys would simply quit Scouting just to get out of it. But not this boy. In fact, it made him more determined than ever to complete what he had started. Now, over the next several years, the Scout progressed slowly through the ranks until eventually, just after his 16th birthday, he achieved his ultimate goal, to become an Eagle Scout. Now, a couple of years later, when it was time to go to school, he really couldn't think about what he wanted to do. So he started thinking about some of the merit badges he had taken over the past few years. And he remembered that at the previous summer camp last year, he had taken a welding merit badge. Now, granted, he wasn't very good at it, but he remembered just how good it felt and how great it was to work with the metal and how much he enjoyed it. So that's what he decided to do. So he signed up at one of the local trade schools, and over the next 2 years, he applied what he'd done in Scouting to what he'd done in school. He worked hard, he never missed a class, always did his homework, and you know something, it paid off. When he graduated, he did so at the top of his class. In fact, he was so good that he was hired straight out of school by a local company that made truck frames. Now, the hours were long and the work was hard. But you know something? Every day he had a smile on his face because he loved what he was doing. Now, after being there for several years, he started thinking about what he could do to take his career to the next level. And he knew that the only way to do that would be to start his own company. So that's what he did. He took the money that he'd saved over the past few years, got a small loan from the bank, bought his own equipment, and set up shop in an old warehouse. Now, if he thought his last job was tough, this one was even twice as hard. You see, every morning he would have to go out to find jobs for his new company. And then, every afternoon into the early evening, he would have to complete those jobs. But you know something? After several months, people started coming to him. You see, they'd heard about his timeliness, his attention to detail, and how he got the job done. Soon, he had another problem. He needed more people. So, he went out and hired. First it was 2, then 4. Soon he had 12 people working for him. Now one day, as he went into his office, he got a phone call. It was from a major manufacturing company on the East Coast. Now they needed parts for their company. Now this was going to be a multi-year contract. It would require him to open several new locations. So, just like he did when he did his Eagle Scout project, he did the same thing with this. He went out, he did the research, found the right people, the right locations, and then within a year, he had set up 4 new locations. Now one day, he was on his way into work, and he got a call from his office manager. Now she said that unfortunately she couldn't make it in that day because her son was sick, and could he take care of the interviews of hiring a new welder? So he called her right back and said, don't worry, he'd take care of the interview process. And he reminded her, he said, remember, family always comes first. Now when he got to work, he went over to her desk, picked up a stack of resumes, went back into his office, and as he sat there looking through the resumes, he noticed that all of them were printed on nice white paper. All of them except for the very last one. As he pulled it out and looked at it, he noticed that the paper had looked at being pulled from an old 3-ring binder. And instead of being printed, it looked like it had been typed by an old typewriter. But what caught his eye the most was the name on top. You see, it was the same name as the person who had bullied him for all those years in school. He sat back in his chair, took a deep breath, and said, surely this couldn't be the same person. So he got up from his seat, walked over to his office window and looked out into the waiting room. As he looked around, he saw a man sitting over in the corner. His clothes were kind of disheveled and looked like they'd seen better days. And as he sat there, his head was hung low as if looking at the ground. Right then, he knew that that man was the same person who had bullied him. He opened the door and started calling interviewees one by one. Now, he spent about 25-30 minutes with each of the persons. But finally, he came to the last one. He opened the door and called out the man's name. The man rose from his seat without ever really lifting his head. It hung low as if looking at the ground. He shuffled into the scout's office and took a seat. The funny thing was, that afternoon, those 2 men talked for over 4 hours. Now, the man told the scout all about what had happened since he left high school. You see, after leaving high school, he'd gone to work for his father's automotive business. Unfortunately, his father had passed away early in life, leaving the man with a company that had a mountain of debt, and now he had no job. He'd had to sell everything that his father had owned simply to pay all the debts off, leaving him with no money and no work. Unfortunately, things had gone from bad to worse. The man had started getting into drugs and alcohol. And one morning, he'd awoken to find himself in the back alley of a building, lying on an old piece of cardboard with bags of garbage surrounding him. He knew right then and there that if he didn't do something with his life, he would probably die on these streets. So that's what he did. He started attending AA and NA meetings. And slowly, over the next several years, he got his life back together again. Unfortunately, the jobs did not come easy. He had taken some menial jobs, but basically to get enough money to put a roof over his head and a hot meal in his stomach every night. And really, that was it. Now, upon hearing all this, the scout, who had been listening intently, sat back in his chair, looked at the man and said, "I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot give you this job." The man, who was still sitting there with his head hung low, got up from his seat and said, "That's okay. I understand. But just as he was about to turn and leave, the scout stopped him and said, "Oh, excuse me, but I didn't quite finish what I was about to say. You see, I cannot give you this job because, quite frankly, I don't think it's right for you. However, I have another job that is a manager of one of my other companies. It pays a lot more money, and I think you'd be perfect for it." The man couldn't believe what he was hearing. At that moment, he turned around and for the first time looked up into the face of the person who he'd bullied for so many years. The man fell to his knees and wept. Upon seeing this, the scout went over, took him by the arm, and raised him up. Now, as he did so, the man said but one word: "Why?" At hearing that, the scout stood straight, put up his scout sign, and said, "A scout is kind." Now, something unusual happened after that day. Those two men actually became friends. And not just good friends, but best friends. They did everything together. Now, after a couple of years, when it was time for the scout to build a house, the man built his house right next door. Now, over the next few years, both of them would get married and have a family, and each of them would have a boy. Now, of course, when it was time, both men took their boys to scouting. Now, those two boys, over the next few years, slowly worked their way up in rank until, just like the scout, just after their 16th birthday, both attained their ultimate goal, and both, on the same night, made Eagle Scout. Now, a couple of years later, both boys went to college, and when they'd graduated from college, they went to work for the Scouts company. Now, they started at the bottom and slowly worked their way up. After several years, they started taking over the day-to-day running and operations of the company, leaving the two men to retire. But even in retirement, the two men did not slow down. Every day, they would have breakfast together, then off they would go, helping out at the churches, the hospitals, men's shelters, food banks. Wherever they were needed, they were there. Unfortunately, over those years, both men suffered from health problems. Now, the scout has a series of heart problems that left him confined to a bed. Now, the man had several operations on his legs, leaving him confined to a wheelchair. Now, one night, the scout awoke, and he knew his time was short. His eyes were slowly closing, and he felt his breaths were a lot shallower. His whole family gathered around him in his room, but where was his old friend? As he lay there, his eyes started to close. Then all of a sudden, the door came open, and in rolled his old friend. He came by to the side of the bed, took the scout's hand, and held it. As he did so, the scout lifted a hand and motioned him to come closer. The man knelt in, and as he did so, the scout said but one word: "Why?" Now, upon hearing that, the old man took hold of the side of the bed, hoisted himself up as best he could, put up his scout sign, and said, "A scout is loyal." At that, the old scout closed his eyes, took his last breath, and passed from this earth. Now, a lot could be taken from this story. A story of friendship, kindness, loyalty. Now, as a scout leader, we teach our scouts the 12 points of the Scout Law, which are as follows. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. There's something I've always wondered about, is if everybody in this world can live by those 12 simple rules, what a wonderful world we would have. Thank you, and good night.
I just wanted to say thank you all for being part of this virtual graduation ceremony. It's been a privilege and an honor to get to know all of you, at least in some degree, while you were here at Triangle Tech. Remember now that you have all the tools necessary to do all the amazing things you want to do in your life. You have the ability to excel and succeed. The world is out there for you to go out and conquer. I can't say this enough. I'm extremely proud of each and every one of the graduates of this graduating class for everything that you put into your time here, your perseverance and getting over the obstacles that got in your way to make it to graduation. This is a day that should be celebrated, and I want to make sure that the emphasis is put on that. This is your day, this is your graduation, and I'm so very proud of each and every one of you. In closing, just remember, let nothing hold you back. Don't sit back and settle for anything. Go out there, find what you want, and accomplish those goals and get the success that you want and so richly deserve. Again, thank you all for attending this virtual graduation ceremony. Good night.